Well, good morning. I'm with my good friend Gary Cole, and Gary is a member of VC, or Vocational Church. Been here for the whole time, I think, 3 years. Did you sleep on the floor? Or did we
Yes,
have,
yes. We
okay.
didn't have beds then.
So back before we had beds, so the first few guys in slept on the floor. And we're going to talk to Gary a little bit about his journey today and where he was and where he is and maybe where he hopes to go. We'll see how that works. So let's go back, way back when you were a kid. What's going on?
So I'm from Tampa, Florida, and I grew up in a middle upper class type of home. My dad was a college professor at USF, and my mom,
Linguistics professor.
linguistics.
You see, now that's just cool, man. Linguistics, all right.
And my mom was in education as well. And so we had a pretty good life growing up.
Okay.
So the only problem with my childhood was that my biological mother and father were divorced.
What age were you?
I was about 3, I want to say.
Okay.
So, I mean, as I said, grew up with two educated parents who were educators, and really everything was pretty much everything that I needed. They provided. I didn't have a bad. I didn't grow up in poverty. Is what I'm really going.
All right, so at age
Yeah.
3, who did you live with? Your mom or dad or joint, or how'd that work?
I lived with my dad and my stepmom in Tampa.
All right, so he got remarried,
Correct.
and you lived with your dad and your stepmom, and your relationship with your real mother is...
I didn't get reacquainted with my real mother until I was 7.
Okay, okay.
So she had kind of not completely faded from memory, but it was a reacquainting process that I had to go through.
Was it traumatic?
Not really, because there was that mother-son relationship.
With your stepmom already.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's kind of when my parents sat me down and explained to me why my parents had gotten divorced, and really explained to me what alcoholism was, and
Was it due to alcohol?
it was.
Okay, so who was a drinker?
My mother,
All right.
which is why my parents divorced.
Okay.
And as I said, I wasn't brought up in poverty or anything like that, but my stepmother and her mother really kind of grew up differently, and my grandmother especially grew up during the Depression, so she did grow up in poverty, and she didn't like any kind of favoritism or complaining or anything like that. So there was some mental abuse, I guess you would call it.
So she wouldn't hear you if you had a complaint?
No, it was really favored towards my stepsister. There was a lot of favoritism towards my
Okay,
stepsister, and a lot of mental abuse towards me and my sisters.
So when you say abuse, criticizing you?
Criticizing, berating, just yelling, and
really?
Yeah,
Oh, man.
just very stern discipline.
Step parents are... It's not natural. Let's put it that way. It's not natural.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. And I struggled with that growing up. In school.
So what was the berating about what you didn't do, your behavior?
My
what?
behavior, yes.
Okay. So when you misbehaved, you got dressed down
Yes.
and in bad, oppressive
Yes,
ways?
usually sat if my parents had some friends of theirs over, and I was misbehaving, I'd get sat down in a chair over in a corner and forced to sit there, away from everybody else. Can't speak, can't. And usually that was followed
And that
afterwards.
came from your mom?
From
I
my
mean,
mom,
your stepmom?
my stepmom, and my grandmother. If there was any kind of gathering of friends of theirs,
But what did your dad do during all that? Let it be?
let it be.
Uh,
Unless it became physical, and sometimes even then, usually, I don't want to say usually, sometimes it was my behavior. I was always seeking attention in some form or another, and I know now that it was due to my disease.
well, I think kids always seek attention, and one of the things that bothers me is, why would they do that? Do they not get enough attention? And that could be. It doesn't sound like your dad led the family. Did he?
He struggled with alcoholism, and there was some physical abuse with my stepmom. So when he needed to lead the family, he'd lead the family.
Okay.
There was some abuse of my sisters, of my stepsister.
That's messed up.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. That's getting me depressed here.
Sorry. Don't want to. I just want to.
Makes me want to go drink.
I just want to give you the whole picture.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, I get it.
So about the time I was in high school, 10th grade, I decided that I'd gotten to the point where I couldn't function, it seemed like. I didn't fit in at school. I didn't fit in at home. I dropped out of school. I started skipping school. My parents found out, and they realized, okay, this is, it's something that's really wrong here. We need to find out what it is. They sent me to see a psychologist.
Why didn't you fit in at school?
Well, I'd been to private Christian schools all my life.
Okay.
And in high school, my parents decided to switch me to a public school because,
Well, it was a culture shock, huh?
yeah,
Yeah,
big time.
yeah.
And I didn't fit in. And I really had trouble since junior high school, fitting in, and some of those behavioral problems were, manifesting in school.
Well, you're a little geeky. Is that?
I've always been skinny and kind of
That's okay.
Yeah.
The geek always wins. Bill Gates over Michael
Yeah.
Jordan. Who did the best?
But I just.
Were you bullied? At
Oh
school?
yes, yeah, always.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just dealt with it the best I could, and by the time I got to high school, my parents realized that something was seriously wrong, and saw a psychologist.
So what? You were withdrawn? What were you doing?
Withdrawn, not doing my homework, just failing all my classes. Didn't
Well,
want
I
to go
did
to
that,
school.
and I wasn't. I wasn't bullied.
But I ended up getting a GED.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
What age?
17.
So you said, I don't need that. I'm going to go get my GED.
Yeah, why should I stay another year in school and continue this when I can get it now?
When it comes to public school, some people do that. They just don't want the nonsense.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot
of people should consider it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so 17, now what?
I joined the Army.
Were you doing any drinking by 17?
I tried alcohol, but I wasn't.
Didn't like it.
No, I liked it. I just couldn't get away with it.
Ah, okay.
And also by this time, by the time I graduated with my GED, I'd also started experimenting with marijuana. A couple of times
Okay.
here and there, but it wasn't a daily occurrence.
Now give me a date.
1987.
Okay.
So after getting my GED, I decided to join the Army. And I joined under the delayed entry program, so I had some
Time to.
time to kind of sort things out and figure out.
Okay. And what was your thinking when you joined the Army? What am I looking for here?
To get away from my family.
Okay.
And looking back now, it probably, I mean, it's not a bad idea to join the military, but for me, it was just not a good idea. I didn't have really the life skills to function in the military as a career. I made it through basic training and my job training, and then I spent my first duty station in Korea at 17 years old,
Okay.
no drinking age, and prostitution is legal
In Korea.
in Korea.
Okay.
You can imagine that I was always broke.
Went south.
Things went south very quickly.
So drunken and immorality.
Correct.
Away we go.
Away we go. For a solid year, and I wanted to stay after that year. Why wouldn't I? But the command element in Korea in my unit did not think that was a good idea. So I went to...
So were you in trouble with your superiors?
I wasn't habitually in trouble, but it was like minor. I was not being responsible. I wasn't adhering to the strictest guidelines. You know, I wasn't ironing my uniforms. My boots weren't polished. You know, my room wasn't always clean as it should have been. Things like that. Nothing, you know.
A little substandard.
Little substandard
Yeah.
things.
So when they heard the name Gary Cole, they went, "Oh, brother, not
Yeah.
what?"
Yeah, this guy's substandard.
Okay.
You know, he's not getting it.
So how long were you in?
I was in the Army for 4 years.
Okay.
2.5 of which I spent at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and which is where I went after I left Korea. And while I was there, I went to Germany
Okay.
and then to Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm. We got deployed to Desert Storm for 5 months.
How'd you like that?
Like is not a good descriptor.
It's not in there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was about 19, 20-ish. 20. And that's a shock for somebody that young to go into a combat environment,
Yeah.
not knowing what to expect.
Guns blazing and mortars flying and.
Planes flying overhead, dropping bombs, and it was scary. But
But by that time you were 18, 19? What were you?
19, 20, I want to
Okay.
say.
Well, that was Vietnam, man. That was nothing but 19-year-olds
Yeah.
just getting blown up and blown all over the place, and nobody was ready for that.
Yeah, but it was, here's the interesting thing about it. It was at that time that I got reminded that God's looking out for me.
Okay.
I-
So when you got reminded, we got to go back, and where's the connection going on here? Christian school?
Christian school is where I first really made the decision
Okay.
to turn my life over to Jesus was in junior high school.
Okay.
I'd been
And-
baptized before that, but
Religiously.
religiously
Yeah.
because it was what my parents thought I should do. You know, in an Episcopalian church, I was brought up Episcopalian.
Okay,
but-
so you gave your life to the Lord, and then did you grow any? Did you feed it any? Did you do anything, or you just feed the flesh?
That's really, looking back now, I can say this. That's really when God started testing my faith.
And untested faith is no faith at all.
Correct. I really didn't know what I was in for when I asked, Jesus into my life.
Yeah, no, nobody does.
And that's kind of the around the point when things started to get really kind of spiritually bad for me, and the bullying and everything kind of started. It's about that time, now that I look at it.
Okay, so you were in the military 2.5 years, and you got accommodations for tidiness on your room, and you got the attaboy for your shoes always being shined, and so and you were drunk half the time?
Well, that's the thing, is after I left Korea, all those habits kind of got put aside. I didn't engage in that kind of behavior until I got back from Desert Storm, and something happened that I remembered while I was here.
Okay.
After I moved in here, as to why.
In VC, you mean?
In VC.
Okay.
In VC, I remembered this traumatizing experience that I had over in the desert that kind of was my trigger.
Okay.
And it was not pleasant. I'm not comfortable talking about it with many people.
Well, there's many people going to listen to this, so you do what you want.
Well,
Give me a general, nothing graphic. If you want.
me and a couple guys from the motor pool decided to go on a little adventure, and this was after the air war was over and the ground war was over.
Okay.
After basically the war was over, and we ventured. We basically got lost and ventured into something that was broadcast on the news as a one of the things that was not looked kind upon at the end of the war. Kind of tarnished that war, as it were.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
We wandered onto that, and like, it wasn't pretty. I'll put it to you that way. It was something that a 20-year-old should not have ever seen. I mean, I know people in law enforcement and emergency services usually deal with things like that all the time, but
Not successfully, though, I don't think.
yeah,
Some kind of brutality.
yeah, it was pretty bad. I don't like much talking,
Okay, it's all right.
getting into the
Don't have to
details
do
or
that.
anything. So, anywho, that was my trigger. That was something that I couldn't deal with, and I was basically told, "Don't tell anybody."
Okay.
By the people I was there with. Don't say anything to anybody about this. They took their pictures and showed them to a few people and thought it was cool and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
But they didn't know what was going on inside, inside of me. And after we got back, I was grateful for life and to be alive. And I started hanging out with some people who did not have my best interest at heart. And they introduced me to crack cocaine.
Okay, there we go. We're graduating now.
And that got me kicked out of the military. Lost all of my benefits, my GI Bill and VA benefits and things like that. But I spent the next 25 plus years kind of just drowning in my sorrow and trying to make those memories go away using whatever drugs or anything I could. And I finally just got to a point where I said, enough with the drugs. Let's try alcohol because that's legal. Same result, even worse, as a matter of fact. And it got me to a point where I was just.
So we're talking 20, 25 years of addiction. Would you call yourself an addict by that time?
Correct. I consider alcohol a drug as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So
Unfortunately, there are Christians listening to this that would argue with you. And they would say, oh, there's nothing wrong with a little drink now and then. And unfortunately, they never see the guy in the gutter with vomit on his shirt. Or it's never them. It's a gateway to a gateway.
yeah, and it took me many years to realize that. And so by the time I had made a decision that I'd had enough, I was physically, mentally, and spiritually just
Toast.
done.
Yeah.
Had nowhere else to turn. My parents had basically locked me out of their house.
Mm-hmm.
I was couch surfing at different people's houses.
That's messed up.
No job. Needed surgery on my back, which is part of the physical thing. But in the back of my mind, actually, let me go back. From 2010 to 2015, I had started going to 12-step meetings, Narcotics Anonymous meetings.
Okay.
And that kind of got me back into the faith,
Okay.
my faith, and thinking about getting back into biblical things.
Okay.
And I thank God for that and for the people that I met there, because that planted a seed that led me, when my parents locked me out of the house and had nowhere else to turn, to the Salvation Army.
Okay. Adult Rehabilitation Center.
Correct.
Every city has one, major city, and it's a good place where people can go for a 6-month free in-residence treatment program. And
Correct.
it's a great start.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
I highly recommend it.
Okay.
And this was in 2015. I stayed the full year. It's a 6-month program, but they allow you to stay there for a year.
Yes.
There's 3 phases to the program.
Okay.
The first 6 months is the first phase. The other 2 phases are 3 months apiece.
Okay.
And that's where they kind of get you into transition, teach you about, filling out your resume, looking for a job. They kind of prepare you for that transition. Unfortunately, the resources they were using, there's such a demand. I can't really blame the Salvation Army for all of this. There's such a demand because homelessness had become such an epidemic. And addiction had become such an epidemic with the opiates.
Yeah.
The opiate epidemic, the demand far outweighed the supply of places to go.
Yeah. So after treatment, out the door, then what?
I went to a friend of mine's house. I started making phone calls before I left the Salvation Army, and I had a plan, but the timing was a little sketchy. And I ended up staying with a friend in Port Richey as a last resort, because the plan I had did not come through. The timing was not there. I planned to go into a veteran's house in Hudson, and they were waiting on a bed. Everything was just kind of up in the air. The timing wasn't right. So I stayed with a friend of mine in Port Richey while I was waiting, and he was going through his own things with his wife and finances, and it just wasn't comfortable.
Of course not. It's not his problem, not your family, yeah. And you were on the couch.
And I was air mattress, so I might as well have been on a couch. But it just wasn't comfortable, and the same resource problems I was experiencing at the Salvation Army, I had experienced there, and I was in Pasco County, and they were having the exact same issues. Go figure. Addiction's everywhere.
I think so. During that time, we had been tossing the idea around a vocational church,
Correct.
and it hadn't happened, but I was making a lot of noise about it, and I was going out on a limb and sawing it off behind me, so that I'd be really embarrassed if I couldn't pull it off. Yeah.
And out of desperation, I decided to call a friend of mine, also another resident here at VC,
Okay.
Tim, and he had mentioned that you had decided to move forward with VC.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh, thank God.
Okay.
There's my blessing.
Okay.
So I called you, and we talked, and we agreed to meet the following day. And me, you, and Sean Martin met at the Bob Evans, was it?
Was Sean Martin there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you tell the story then.
We met at the Bob Evans for the initial interview.
Okay, how'd you
screen.
get there?
You came to get me.
Oh, okay.
And, it went well, and you agreed that
Give it a shot.
let's do it. We
So
went back
I
to.
remember rounding you up and taking you back to Hudson to pick up some stuff, and we made a day of it, more or less.
Yeah.
Just getting you put together and brought you out here and gave you another air mattress. It didn't last long, though. We got some beds, and
Yeah.
now you came into the place with into our place with some Bible knowledge. My sense of it was that you knew Bible stories, but you really had never applied the Bible stories. Is that safe to say?
That's correct. And I didn't really have the depth of knowledge about those stories, what they meant spiritually.
Okay,
I just thought they were stories.
just stories.
I never really applied them.
Yeah.
I'd done some, I'd memorized all the books of the Bible in order because I
Okay.
was told to.
Okay.
It was more of a chore.
Yeah, yeah.
My heart wasn't in it.
Well, you've been here 3 years plus now, and how many Bible studies have you been in? 3 times
3 times.
52 is 150 times 3. That's 450, maybe 500 Bible studies you've been in.
Easily.
Yeah.
And my wealth of knowledge is.
It's a wealth. Turned into a wealth. Well, and how has it affected you? All of that, the Bible studies and the group
It's-
and the.
It's always in the back of my mind when I feel convicted about something. There's an honest to goodness change,
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And I'm not. I'm not as spiritually fit as I'd like to be, but I'm not where I was.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's a journey,
It's definitely a journey. Definitely a journey,
and we're doing some. 500 Bible studies we've done together, and it's got to take effect somewhere, right?
it does.
You got a job now
I have a job.
and
Very
a
good
car.
job. And a car.
It burns a little oil, but we don't care about that.
No. Just call it a burnt offering.
A burnt blessing, right?
Yeah.
And doing well at work.
Doing well. I
Okay.
have a supervisor position, which for a nationwide company, a billion-dollar company
Okay.
that I never thought I'd get.
That's cool. And we've got some people from our church. That's where the connections were made.
Correct.
I made some contacts for everybody I could think of that might hire a guy that was an ex-addict. And in your case, not criminal. We do have some criminals here. And ex-criminals. Well, just criminals. we'll work on that. Still working on that part. But you're in a better place.
Definitely in a better place than I've been in, well, for all my life.
Anywhere in your life. Yeah.
Even when I was in the Army, I was doing it because I was told.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is different because it's like I want to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being told to.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And
So let me ask you this, and do you see a future, or have you been, surely you must think about that. I mean, right now you're kind of comfortable.
I'm kind of comfortable, and there are times when I'm uncomfortable.
Okay,
but,
that's the nature of our beast, right?
right? But I'm not rushing into things like I used to.
Uh-huh.
You know, doing those knee-jerk reactions,
Yeah, please don't do that.
and I'm letting kind of God guide me. I'm not trying to force my will
Yep,
on my
understand.
on my life.
All right.
You know, I'm trying to be patient.
Did I baptize you?
Yes,
Where?
Eddie's.
At Eddie's house?
No, at
TI.
TI.
Timothy
correct.
Initiative. Okay.
Yeah, TI.
Well, I'm glad you're in a better place.
So am I.
I guess that's...
And really, I've got you to thank for that, and God to
well,
thank
yeah,
for that.
Amen. Glad to be a part of anything God's into, and kind of I'm driven more or less by the notion of others, and that occurs to me all the time.
And that's really something I've also discovered is, and it's something when I was going to my 12-step meetings that they really kind of preach to us, same message, is, get out of yourself.
Yep.
Get out of self and give to others.
Yeah, that's
That's how you should pray.
I think that kind of breaks the code, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the secret.
Yeah, I think so. Well, let me pray out
Okay.
and ask God's blessing on your life. Now, Lord, I thank you for Gary and the journey he's on. And Lord, I'm grateful that we were able to dig him out of the pit he was in. And I pray that you'll help him to be your servant, help keep convicting him of things that he ought to do, and bless him for the things that he does. And I pray that you'll continue to help him look forward to the future. And I pray this now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.